A Hunter in Teyvat, Chapter 34, Fan Fiction, by Azazyel. When we arrived at Mondstadt and approached the Adventurers Guild, we finally met the oh-so-elusive figure of Katheryne, the spokeswoman of the guild that typically handed out our quests and also had clones or something of herself spread out across Teyvat, as every single guild in all the cities of Teyvat had one that knew of the traveler and their adventures, which suggested they had some kind of hive mind or something. Ah, the new honorary knights of Favonius. What can the Adventurers Guild do for you both? Katheryne asked, bowing lightly in greeting. Katheryne was a rather petite woman with short black hair and blue eyes, and was wearing an honestly kind demeanor as she spoke with us. The reason I wasn't sure if she was a woman was supposedly in the game, if you managed to glitch behind the stand she was stationed at and looked at the back of her neck, they apparently all had a keyhole. Like she was some kind of wind-up automaton. Hello. We would like to accept the Ruin Guard elimination quest that's based over in the Dragon's Pine Mountains. Lumen answered, and then we handed over our badges that we got on our last visit after Storm Terror attacked Mondstadt, where Katheryne was supposedly busy coordinating some adventures to clean up some of the damages, so we didn't meet her. Katheryne hummed in thought as she sorted through a couple of papers before she finally pulled out one. Well, normally we don't allow new adventurers to go on such dangerous adventures, as typically only heavily experienced adventurers in groups will dare to mess around with a Ruin Guard, let alone several of them at once. But seeing as you both are vision wielders and thus are exempt from such rules, you both can obviously take on a couple of such elite foes at a time. With that said, she put our badges next to a weird machine that had several crystals attached, which lit up as our badges glowed lightly for a moment. Here you two go, she said cheerfully as she handed over our badges before clearing her throat. Now those badges are attuned to you and will record you actually killing the Ruin Guards, thus once you have completed the task there is no need to bring back cumbersome proof like a chunk of said Ruin Guard or hilichurl weapon should you both take such missions, Katheryne explained, and honestly, I kinda wanted to throw the badge back at her. Basically, the badge would act as a recorder that would be watching every move, and once we completed our task, we could go back to return the recording. I honestly would prefer to keep my privacy. Before I could even ask or respond, Lumen held the badge and asked Katheryne lightly. And will they work within our space bag, so we don't need to worry about putting it on right before a fight? Katheryne firmly shook her head, responding. Oh, dear heavens, no. The Adventurers Guild doesn't want to step on the toes of adventurers with visions, but we also need proof of the commission being completed. For normal adventurers, they can use the badges as proof of their efforts, so if the team leader attempts to short someone their payment they can appeal to the guild for arbitration, and more importantly we can watch their quests to see how they die should their badges be recovered. It's pretty smart to have those options, and I honestly doubt they would be able to work being held within my space bag, and I don't care even if the Fatui get news of my summons and skills, as this world does have its own magic from Somaru, and if anything, I could claim to be half Kitsune or something like part Adeptus similar to Yenfei from Liyue. What's the reward for the quest? Paimon asked the pressing question, as I imagined she was wondering how much food she was going to be able to weasel out of us from such a reward. Katheryne briefly looked back down at the paper and then responded to Paimon. Oh, Ruin Guards have a standing bounty for 50,000 mora for each one destroyed. They are extremely dangerous to the stability of humanity, as should one wander across that bridge, for example, and get within the city, many people would die to say the least. As she spoke, she pointed to the long bridge that separated the city from the surrounding land, and I realized how the Knight's headquarters was all the way on the back half of the city, so should an elite enemy manage to fight its way into the city, the business district would be destroyed. As I was thinking about the value of a Ruin Guard, I then asked a follow-up question to Paimons. Are there bounties for Ruin Graders and Ruin Hunters? Katheryne nodded and explained how the Hunters were surprisingly worth the same amount as Ruin Graders at a solid 1,000,000 mora, as they were both at the same danger level as Ruin Graders, as they could and had flown over cities and bombarded the inhabitants with missiles and powerful beam weaponry until the city's defenders could take them down. After a few more pleasantries with Katheryne, we left Mondstadt and quickly made our way to the Dragon's Pine Mountains by riding upon my Anemo elemental. After we flew over the river separating the lands of Mondstadt from the mountain, I could feel the temperature instantly drop to frigid levels that made Lumen shudder atop me and helplessly rub her hands over her bare legs to generate some friction warmth. Even with the Anemo elemental under my guidance encasing us in a barrier that kept out the stabbing winds, I could still feel the frigid windlass surrounding us, so I looked up at the top of the massive central mountain where we could stop the rampaging winds and thus generally lower the temperature. But that was a quest for another time. So where are we even going? Paimon asked as we flew around the mountain range towards the back half of the central mountains. As I recalled, there was both a cryo-hilichurl and a Ruin Grader that wasn't also surrounded by a half-dozen Ruin Guards in a small arena that would all attempt to mob us. We are going to kill a hilichurl I know of. At least I know where the camp is, I said after the wind barrier seemingly shrank towards us momentarily as an especially powerful gust of wind literally froze the anemo energy my elemental was outputting. I frowned as I realized the constant outputting of anemo energy was taking energy from my aura, and we had a solid few minutes before we needed to land and let my aura regenerate lest our ride disappear right from beneath us as we were flying in the air. But thankfully, we saw the massive 10-meter blue-toned hilichurl chieftain as we crested over a small mountain, as the lawchurl was seemingly busy punching down some of the trees beside it with impunity in a small valley. Let my ruined greater start some fires and get its attention, I yelled as Lumen threw herself off my lap and opened her wing glider, with Paimon doing her disappearing act. She sent me a thumbs up, and as I flew a few hundred meters above the lawchurl and he didn't even realize I was there with the howling winds covering any noises I could make. I for a moment considered having Lumen empty her space bag of all the wood she had randomly collected onto the head of the lawchurl, but then I remembered I could summon my familiars in midair. My face couldn't help but break out into a grin as my ruined greater fell out of my hastily summoned glyph, and with a massive crashing noise my ruined greater collided with the lawchurl legs, first smashing into the lawchurl's shoulders and starting a small avalanche of snow as the snow coating the valley walls all collapsed inwards towards the now violently wrestling forms of the lawchurl and the ruined guard. With a hearty roar, the lawchurl managed to cover itself in its cryo armor and with all the surrounding snow and cryo energy surrounding it. It was able to easily grab the ruined guard by its foot and use it as a baseball bat as it smashed the ruined guard through several trees and even shattered portions of the rock walls of the valley before my ruined guard faded into motes of light from being destroyed. Me and Lumen shared a look as we were gliding downwards after seeing the violent death of my ruined guard, but with a shrug, I created a glyph above me and flipped myself upwards with my wingsuit before disabling it. Then as I managed to get my feet above me and braced against my solid glyph, I shot off my glyph, throwing myself towards the ground with my saber drawn and covered with anemo energy. I was slightly off with my aim, and instead of using my saber to slash into the head of the lawchurl, I only managed to cut a massive gash into its chest before I had to take a hand off my saber and send a blast of anemo energy beneath me to cushion my fall as I landed in the compacted snow on the ground. As I was attempting to get back to my feet in the unsettled ground, the enraged hilichurl chieftain attempted to use one of the destroyed trees as a baseball bat to smash me, but Lumen sent a series of furious wind blades into the head and shoulders of the lawchurl as she slowly drifted towards us. When the lawchurl focused on Lumen and fruitlessly attempted to throw rocks and other debris at Lumen, I snuck up behind it and then I jumped off a rock, and with both arms, I stabbed my anemo-coated saber into the spine of the lawchurl. I could feel its spine shatter as the condensed tornado coating my saber expanded violently within its body, resulting in the lawchurl freezing in place before collapsing to the ground dead. As the lawchurl began breaking down into smoky wisps of darkness, I collapsed against one of the surrounding felled trees and began rubbing my bare hands against one another as the cold was getting to me. Please subscribe to this channel for listening and patreon.com/Azazyel to read all of his stories.